All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start off by giving all praises to Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, Bashim Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well, and also honor and salutation to those of you who are the hopeful elect. Oh, Salakia. And are out there teaching the word in sincerity and truth. All right, so I wanted to get into this parable of the prodigal son. As I was doing my show yesterday, I it just popped in my head, and I wrote it down on the paper here. And the thought is this, that the prodigal son is a parable about something specific, very specific, and it gives us some insight into who was being spoken about in the New Testament when it references Gentiles. Okay, now you have you have actual Gentiles, right? Which are the heathen nations, those nations that are outside of Israel, right? But then you have Gentiles who, when it's, I'm sorry, Gentiles who were spoken about that were actually Israelites who were behaving themselves like the Gentiles. So let me go to my go-to. This is my go-to. I actually had one open. I don't know why I did that. So this is, yep, right here. Ezekiel 5. Ezekiel 5 and 5. It says, thus saith the Lord power. This is Jerusalem. I have set it in the midst of the nations and countries that are round about her. It says, and she have changed my judgments into wickedness more than the nations, and my statutes more than the countries that are round about her. For they have refused my judgments and my statutes. They have not walked in them, right? So this is what made the circumcision, if you will, call the Israelite foreigners the uncircumcision, because they had been, or we had been mingled into different lands, and in that mingling into different lands, started practicing the cultures and the customs of these different nations, right? What is that? I think that's First Corinthians. What does it say? Carried. Yeah, I think it's 12 and 1. Oh, let me see. 12 and 2. First Corinthians 12 and 2. It says, ye know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto those to these dumb idols, even as ye were led, right? And so this is why I like to say we were being called Gentiles, right? Because we were practicing the things that the other nations were practicing, right? This is why it says ye were Gentiles, and that's very important to note as we get into this parable here. So they were Gentiles, right? And they returned to being Israelites by way of the Lord Yahweh Shai, right? Matter of fact, let me just look for something really quick. Just bear with me for a second here. I'm thinking of a scripture, but I just want to look. Yep, 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 yep. Yep. I'll save that for the end. All right. So as you see here, it says that ye were Gentiles, right? Carried away unto these dumb idols, right? So that means they were a thing, and they turned from being that thing and came back to being the original thing that they were, right? Um, so let's go to this parable, right? And as we read through it, what you're going to see is that it starts to remind you of certain scriptures. So this is Luke 15 and 11. It says here, it says, and he said, a certain man had two sons, right? So already it reminds me of a scripture that I'll get into in just a second, because there's another word here. Actually, let's just go to it now. So this is and he said, a certain man had two sons, right? Let me read just a little bit more. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living, right? So there's two sons, right? And what this reminded me of, as soon as I read it, was Ephesians 2 and 11. I'm sorry, 2 and 15. It says, having abolished, actually, let me go to 11, because it'll explain what this is speaking to in 15. It's Ephesians 2 and 11. It says, wherefore remember that ye being in time past Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, right? And why were they called the uncircumcision? Why were they being ostracized, if you will? They were being ostracized because they had been living like the other nations, right? And what did the Jews, as it were, what was their sentiment? It was, hey, we've been here. We maintain the old way. We maintain the customs. We maintain the laws. So what do they have to do with being Israelites? How can they be saved? They weren't here. They weren't even circumcising their children, right? Which, let's get into that a little bit before I move on. Let's go here and here. Let's go to First Maccabees. First Maccabees. I think it's 11th verse. Yep. This is our First Maccabees 1 and 11. It says, in those days went there out of Israel wicked men, right, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have much sorrow, right? So this device pleased them well, right? Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen, right? Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, right? And made themselves uncircumcised, right? Now, it says made themselves uncircumcised. Now, if they were already circumcised, right, you can't sew the foreskin back on yourself, right? So made themselves uncircumcised in what way? They forsook the holy covenant, okay, and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief, right? So this is why they were being called by the circumcision the uncircumcision, because they were practicing the customs of the heathen nations that were round about them, right? They went from a place to another place, right? And then, as it says here in Ephesians, they returned, that they were in time past Gentiles, right? It says that at that time ye were without Hamashiach, right? Being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, right? Because what happened? They left. What is that? We can go back to Maccabees to talk about that a little bit. I think it's the 38th verse. And so much that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, wherein the city was made an habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness, her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths into reproach, her honor into contempt, right? So this is what was happening, right? Uh, so they were aliens from the Commonwealth because they left for many different reasons, right? And even before Grecian times, right? There were those who didn't or couldn't return to Israel. When you can learn about that in Nehemiah or Ezra. Some of them couldn't provide the proper paperwork, right? And then some of them decided not to come back. When you go to Nehemiah, right? Nehemiah had an occupation. Matter of fact, let's go to that. What's that? I think it's Nehemiah. I think it's the first chapter. Let me look in here because I'm always able to find it a little quicker in here. Let's go to Nehemiah. Bear with me for a second here. No, that's got to be back here. Bear with me for a second here. Bear with me for a second. Here we go. Getting there. Bear with me for a second. Because I think it might be the second chapter, but I'm just going to read it. Right. Let's go to the second chapter of Nehemiah real quick because I opened up another one. There we go. Nehemiah 2. Okay. So Nehemiah in this story, like he had heard what was going on in Israel, right? And he was saddened by it, right? And he requested from King, who was king at this time, Artaxerxes, right? A certain thing. So let's read this a little bit. So this is Nehemiah 2:1. It says, "And it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence," right? So this was his job. Nehemiah had a job, right? He was a cupbearer for Artaxerxes the king, right? Right, pouring his wine and so forth, right? This was his job. This was his occupation, right? And so people did this. Just like if you like for instance, my I won't say the company and I won't say the town. I mean, it doesn't matter. I think I've said it before anyway. My grandfather, we're from upstate New York. My grandfather, my mother's father, was offered a job by the company that he was working for, to move to I think Virginia, I think. But my grandfather was doing some dirt. He was well, I can't say it's dirt now that I'm in the know, but he had another woman, and so he didn't want to take the job because he wanted to stay there with his side piece. So he never took the job, and my grandmother was mad at him for a long time for that. Still is. She'll still talk about it to this day. But he was offered a job to move to another place. Is the point, right? And so this happened to our people too, right? So you had people who had set up lives when they were in the Babylonian captivity, right? So as we were returning here in Ezra and Nehemiah, some of them stayed in those lands. They had established a life, right? They had been there for a certain number of generations, right? So it's like, okay, we go back to Israel. It's strange to us now, right? It's a strange land. It's a strange land to my children. They don't know the land. You gotta apply that type of reality to it, right? So that was a point, right? So when you go to Ephesians here, when it says aliens from the Commonwealth, this is how they were aliens to the Commonwealth. They weren't in the land of Israel. They were in these other lands, right? Um, it says, and strangers from the covenants of promise, right? Having no hope and without the Most High in the world, right? Why? Because they weren't learning of our customs, right? They didn't know about the covenants of promise because they had been removed from it, right? Verse 13, it says, "But now in Hamashiach Yahushai, ye who were sometimes, I'm sorry, ye who were sometimes, who sometimes were afar off, are made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach," right? So because the Lord shed his blood, because the Lord died for our sins, they were now allowed to do what? Be made nigh, or to come back, if you will, right? For he is our peace, who hath made both one, right? Which brings us back here, right? A certain man had two sons, right? And it was a son that was obedient and stayed with his father, and a son that was disobedient, right? And wasted his substance with riotous living, which we'll get to in just a second. But let me finish this in Ephesians, right? So this is what it reminded me of when I read that in Luke, right? So it says, "For he is our peace, who hath made both one, and hath broken down the middle wall of partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances, for to make in himself of twain," right? Which is the old English way of saying one, right? Not Mark Twain. Not that motherfucker. uh, Definition. Twain. Archaic term for two, right? Of twain, one new man, so making peace, and that he might reconcile, right? So that these are always good words, right? Restore friendly relations between, right? Cause to coexist in harmony, make or show to be compatible, make one account consistent with another, especially by allowing for transactions begun but not yet completed. Woo! You see, right? Reconcile both unto God, who? The obedient child and the disobedient child. This is what Romans 11 was about, when you had the wild branches and the natural branches, right? Both were going to be reconciled, right? Mercy was introduced, right? Or let's say reintroduced. Grace was reintroduced because of the falling away of the Gentiles, right? And then through their falling away, mercy was given unto the Jews, who also fell away, and through their falling away gave mercy to the wild branches, right? That's what it tells you in Romans 11, right? So this is what that reconciling of both is, right? It says, reconcile both unto the Most High in one body, right? Or one nation, right? Like it says in Ezekiel 37, right? Let's go to that. Let's go to Ezekiel 37. Because I think it also says something about two. Oh, shit. Ezekiel 37. I think it also says something about two in here, too. 37 and 15. It says, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, right? And write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions. Okay? And join them one to another into one stick. Right? And they shall become one in thine hand. And when the children of thy people shall ask unto thee, saying, wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Say unto them, thus saith the Lord power, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. And the sticks whereon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. Right? Right? So this is what this is talking about right here, right? One body by the cross, right? Having slain the enmity thereby, and came and preached peace to you which were afar off, and to them that were nigh. You see? Some of them were far off, away from the land. Some of them were nigh, who stayed in the land. Right? Very simple. For through him we both have access by one Spirit unto the Father. Okay? Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, right? But fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of the Most High, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahushua HaMashiach himself being the chief cornerstone, okay? In whom all the building fitly framed together groweth into an holy temple unto the Lord. Temple in the Lord, in whom ye also are builded together for an habitation of the Most High through the Spirit, right? So let's go back. So all that came from this two sons, right? Now we're starting to understand what this parable is about, right? And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, right? Afar off, right? And there wasted his substance with riotous living. So I looked up this word riotous. I should do it in Greek too, which I will. It says riotous, marked by or involving public disorder, right? What does that remind you of? The wild branches, right? Unruly, rowdy, disorderly, disruptive, out of control, boisterous, lively, right? Having a vivid, varied experience, right? So this is what they did, right? They went into these other lands and they lived riotously, right? Let's go back to Maccabees just a little bit more in here. Let's see. It says here, verse 44, it says, For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, right? And make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances, right? And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he says, should die, right? So this is riotous living. Listen to this. Leaving their children uncircumcised, sacrificing swine's flesh, unclean beasts, right? Polluting the sanctuary, profane Sabbaths, festival days, right? No drink offerings. They started to live riotously. Okay. All right. So let's go back. Actually, I said I want to look up riotous here. Riotous. Asotos.
Strong's G 811. Asotos. Asotos.
All right. Which asotos is dissolutely, profligately. All right. Let's look these up. There you go. Dissolutely. Adjective dissolute, having or showing bad morals. Right? Or behavior. Right? Going back to, do I have it still pulled up? Let's go back to Ezekiel 5. All right? And she have changed my judgments into wickedness more than the nations, right? And my statutes more than the countries that are round about her. For they have refused my judgments and my statutes. They have not walked in them. Okay? Let's look up this other word here. profligate, wildly extravagant, very wasteful, abandoned to vice and corruption, right? Which is what it reads here, okay? It says, shamelessly immoral. Examples: he earned quite a bit of money as a professional athlete, but squandered much of it on his profligate lifestyle. Okay? A profligate. I'm saying it wrong. Okay? So let's go back. All right, so now you're starting to understand what this parable is about. We only 3 verses in. Okay? Verse 14, it says, and when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Right? And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country. Right? Right? Didn't they say, what is that? I think it was the 11th verse in here. 11. Right. Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. Right? Oh boy. Where'd I go? Yep. And joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. We just read that in Maccabees, right? Oh man. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk of that swine. With the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. Right. So this is how hungry he was. Right. He would have ate what the swine was eating. He said, and when he came to himself, right, when he started thinking like, I'm fucking up, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger, right? I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Bring forth the best robe, and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand, and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead, and is alive again, right? Ye were Gentiles, right? But are now brought nigh, right? He was lost, and is found, right? And they began to be merry. Now, his elder son was in the field. And as he came and drew nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, Thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. And he was angry, right? And would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him, right? So what did this remind me of, right? When you go to Romans 11, it says, Romans 11:11, it says, I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather, through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. Provoke who to jealousy? The Israelites that stayed in the land. The circumcision, if you will. Those who kept the culture and the ordinances in the land. You see? You see? What is that? Deuteronomy, I think it is, right? That he was quoting? Yes. Yes. Yep. Let's open this. Let's go up in here. It's Deuteronomy 32 and 21. It says, they have moved me to jealousy with that which is not a power, right? They have provoked me to anger with their vanities. And I will move them to jealousy With those which are not a people, I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Now you know who that foolish nation is talking about. Israelite foreigners. Okay? It's easy. It's very simple. Let's keep going. Yep. Verse 29, it says, and he answering said, and he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and entreated him. And he answering said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgress I at any time thy commandment. And yet thou never gavest me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. Right? But as soon as this thy son is come, or was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots, thou hast killed for him the fatted calf. Right? And he said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and be glad. For this thy brother was dead, and is alive again, and was lost, and is found. You see? This is talking about the Israelite foreigners. And that's what these mysteries were, right? They were mysteries about the Israelites going to other lands, becoming like the heathen, right? And then through the death of the Lord Yahushua, being able to be reconciled back into the fold, right? And what's interesting, when you go up above this prodigal son parable, you got the lost coin, right? The lost sheep, all talking about the same thing, man. Right? Let's read a little bit of this. Verse 8. Either what woman have 10 pieces of silver, right? So those are the ones that stayed with her, right? If she lose one piece, doth not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently till she find, right? So if she lost one of those that were hers in the beginning, right? She's going to look for that one to reconcile it back to the bunch, right? And when she hath found it, she calleth her friends and her neighbors together, saying, Rejoice with me, for I have found the piece which I had lost. Likewise I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of the Most High over the sinner that repenteth, right? The lost sheep, right? It's all the same thing, man. You know? So those that were lost are now being reconciled. And there's something that I was listening to. And the elder Yashawamba said this. He said, we're Gentiles, right? And we were brought back in to the fold by Paul's ministry, right? So we have to remember that we are walking examples of what was going on in the New Testament, or you can even say a continuation, right? Because we all were in the world. Some of us were Pan-Africanists. Some of us were Muslim, right? Some of us were, Buddhists, and Christians, and Baptists, and what have you, right? And we were brought back in through Paul's ministry, which he preached, which was through the mercy and grace that was shed on us through the blood of Yahushua. We can now come back into the fold, right? So that's it, man. Hopefully that was edifying. I want to give all praises, as always, to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Honor and salutation to the elect. With that, I say shalom.